Hello and welcome to another edition of Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. I will be your host. I'm also the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, which is an interdimensional or hyperspace portal between these realms of greater density and higher, less dense realms. There's a long, wonderful story about the creation of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I am here today to tell you about a couple of things. First of all, the existence of my class and the beginning of a new semester in January of 2015. My class is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And the other thing I'd like to speak about today is the importance of light, especially light during this dark time of year. So I just returned in from doing some sun gazing outside. I go down to the end of my driveway where there is some good sun because there's a lot of beautiful redwoods that shade my house. And in truth, this is why I relocated to a sunnier climate than that of upstate New York, because first, I'm going to describe a little bit about the significance of ingesting pure sunlight, why I do it, when it began, and how that ties into the Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans and interdimensional portal shape that I embody. So, right now, most people's bodies run on what is analogous to combustion, like a steam engine. Your muscles move because you literally combust material. Although your body, you yourself, are made of slowed down or solidified light, you do not ingest pure light, you ingest light that has been captured by an intermediary. The intermediary is named chlorophyll. Chlorophyll changes that light from non-physical energy into the type of glucose or sugar that is readily available to be ingested and used as coal, quote unquote, for the steam engine, quote unquote, that is your physical metabolism. We understand from the analogy of the steam engine that that is not the most efficient source of energy. For example, whenever an engine runs, if there is heat, it's a byproduct of friction. If there's sound, it's also a byproduct of friction. Friction is tells us that there is entropy or loss of energy. Basically, heat, sound, and friction tell us that is a very inefficient engine. So as a brief aside, if you're ever driving down the road and you hear a very loud motorcycle with, very loud engine that has been tuned specifically to be loud, you can laugh heartily to yourself that even though their engine might be loud, it's actually not efficient. I bring this all up because our bodies, the human form of the physical body, was not meant to be used in such an inefficient way. And the reason why the body ages what I would call prematurely, if your body ages and dies within 100 years, to my estimation, that is premature. The body was meant to be able to be cellularly regenerated and last for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So certainly barely making it to 100 and being so worn out and depleted by the time you get there is not the original intention for use of this body. However, feeding this body inefficient fuel over the course of 100 years will definitely lead to accelerated cell degeneration, overall decrepitude, and eventual death of the macroscopic organism. But that was not the original intention. The original intention was not for one's alimentary tract to be used as a home for between 3 and 5 pounds of gut bacteria. Trillions and trillions of bacteria live within the landing pad of your intestines. In fact, if you were to add up numerically, if your body were a true democracy in terms of cellular life, the bacteria that live in your gut far outnumber the cells of your body that you would define as quote unquote part of you. So if you were a true democracy, the bacteria of your gut would far outnumber and outvote you in choices for the overall organism. However, we understand that it's not run as a true democracy. Your brain/mind/soul/spirit/consciousness gets to be the driver in charge of where the overall macroscopic organism is going. All this to be said that your alimentary tract was originally meant to be an ingester of light. And now let's get into light and what is light. So your body is physical matter. Matter is light that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light. There is currently a lie that is being propagated on Earth, and that is that there is a speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, and that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. This little gem comes to us via Einstein, who is celebrated as an intellectual hero unwittingly by the people whom Einstein's ideas have imprisoned, because that idea that there's a speed of light and that is the limit to how fast objects can move is one of the bars on the cage of your quarantine of your consciousness that is preventing you and many others from becoming true galactic citizens. So, in order to be able to give birth to this new dimension, to have contact with higher dimensional beings, to interact with beings that have a radically different perspective based upon their multidimensionality, it is necessary for you to do yoga of the perception. Expand and stretch your own perception to encompass the idea that, yes, things, objects, consciousness can be moving at the speed of light and greater. And actually, if we want to quibble with scientists and physicists, we could say that, according to Einstein's theories, the limiting factor is not being able to move at the speed of light. It is accelerating mass that is not yet at the speed of light to be able to move that fast. So really, the end around, the workaround, the way that you get around the blockade of consciousness is to understand that there are already beings that are moving at the speed of light and faster. And there are even portions of your own consciousness that are currently moving at the speed of light and faster. So it is not that it is an impossibility in order to accelerate your physical matter to the speed of light. Yes, it would take an incredible amount of energy, but you don't have to accelerate, you're already there. All this is speaking to the idea that your body is being used on a lower or diminished level than it was designed to be used for. For example, a computer can be used as a paperweight. My computer can be used like a hammer to drive a nail into the wall. It would totally destroy my computer, and it would not be able to be used for its original purpose, which is not as a blunt object to drive a nail into the wall. This is everything to do with your current status and your physical body and what you were intended to be used for. So the physical form was not intended to be a house for gut bacteria, and you were not intended to get your nourishment by chewing up or blending up physical matter into tiny pieces and pouring it down your gullet and having it pass through you. So what it was intended was that you would ingest sunlight directly with no intermediary. And now we're talking about what life was like in what has been termed a mythological time, mythological to the people of this time and place, because it does not occur in the historical record, and memories of it are foggy or hazy and fall into the category of once upon a time, or a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, or understanding time beyond the current mentality. Because truly, the time of Atlantis and Lemuria, these are cultural civilizations that exist before the amnesia of our current cultural civilization began. So, in these far ancient times, the human form, even though it might have appeared humanoid and very similar to what you are currently inhabiting, it functioned very differently. So the vehicle that people wore and walked around in at that time was not disconnected from higher consciousness. It was totally in tune with and in touch with higher vibrational, less dense realities, and there were no intermediaries of consciousness, and there was very minimal distortion. So it must be understood that every time energy goes from a higher dimensional, less dense realm to a lower dimensional, more dense realm, there is concomitant distortion. Just like if you tried to take a three-dimensional object like a bouquet of flowers and stick it through a two-dimensional slot like a mail slot, or trying to get it underneath a door like a thin, long slit, the bouquet would have to be crushed. It would lose a lot of its basic information, and its format would have to be changed in order to render it into a dimensional format that could fit into a lower dimensional state. So, too, is it with occupying one's body and information in a lower dimensional state. Every time you ingest information in a lower dimensional state, it has been stepped down or squashed or diminished in order to fit through the opening into that lower dimensional realm. So, a lot of the concepts that are higher dimensional concepts have been distorted by entry into the lower dimensional realm, by having to fit those concepts into carriers for concepts that are called words or verbalized language. In Atlantis and Lemuria, there was minimal distortion because there was minimal use of language. Ironically enough, I am now reclaiming language and using this slowed down and distorted form of energy transference in order to bring you, listeners, and humanity and the planetary noosphere or consciousness as a collective to a higher, less dense, and less distorted state, because that is actually the role that I play here. So I would also like to speak a little bit about the role that I play personally as an energy conduit, bringing the energy and awareness from a higher dimensional, less dense realm to the physical earth plane here in a format such as words, and also such as recorded videos and artwork that can be perceived by beings who use their five senses, five sensory apparatuses in order to perceive the realm around them, and are working on activating that sixth sense, the non-physical extrasensory perception that we can also use in order to perceive the realm around us. So when I first came into this physical body, and I am a walk-in, I introduce myself to anyone who's listening to this broadcast and meeting me by voice for the first time. I am not the original inhabitant of this physical form. I came to inhabit it with my cosmic or stellar consciousness on October 8th of 2001 as part of the interdimensional upheaval that surrounded the events of 9/11 2001, which were eventually, essentially, those events created a disturbance or a perturbation in the field of hyperspace reality, and I came into this lower dimensional, greater density body through my own creation, which is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I named it that. The hyperspace beings that were with me when I invented it turned to me and said, "You created it, you get to name it." Much like the discoverer of a dinosaur species via fossils gets to name that species. And I looked at it and I said, "It's a flying rainbow lasagna." And the name stuck. And so to anyone who would like to cast aspersions upon the name, please do not take issue with the name of what essentially is my creation or my child. I get to name it, and I feel it is a descriptive and appropriate term. It is a type of hypertorus, or a torus or donut shape that has been placed in a higher dimensional space. So I created this higher dimensional space as the personal solution for my own troubles, which were that I was being attacked by satanic forces, and my only other alternative was to die or to lose continuity of consciousness. Rather than die or cease to exist or no longer have continuity of my consciousness. And of course, rather than being co-opted by the force of evil or the antithesis of consciousness in the universe, I did what Captain Kirk did. I Kobayashi Maru. I reprogrammed the challenge that I was submerged within. In the Kobayashi Maru, Captain Kirk reprograms the unfair scenario that he is involved in. It's a no-win scenario. He reprograms it so that it is possible for him to survive. Well, the scenario that I was submerged in was a similar no-win scenario, and I reprogrammed reality by creating a new dimension. This means that I had and still have greater degrees of freedom available to me. It was my own little ant moment where I was capable of jumping off the flat surface of a two-dimensional piece of paper and moving into a third-dimensional reality, bypassing all of the linear gobbledygook and having to go, that one would have to go through in between those 2 points and going directly from point A to point B. This experience opened up many new possibilities, not only for me, but also for the entire universe. And my experience from that moment forward has been an unfolding of those possibilities. Really, my desire to be here in the third dimension is exploratory. I wanted to find out the ramifications or the significance of having created this new dimension. It would be analogous to creating a new color and then saying, well, now that I've created a new color, I want to see what all of the new paintings look like, because there's going to be all sorts of new wonderful combinations in light of this new color. And I am here on Earth. First of all, I arrived through my own interdimensional portal. I use my interdimensional portal every moment of every day, not only to connect to Source and get pure energy, and that goes down to sun gazing, but also in order to bring new ideas and new energy to this level of density that would not be here otherwise. So, I don't run my body like an inefficient steam engine. And this is why I moved to California, because 5 months out of the year in upstate New York, in Woodstock, which is a lovely small mountainous community of artists, there is not enough sunlight for me to eat. When I first came into this body in 2001, I didn't know the rules of this time and place. And I tried to just live off of pure sunlight. I didn't understand why my body was weak and I felt hungry, but I didn't have understanding. I just knew I felt empty or depleted, and I needed something else other than just sunlight. I needed to learn the rules of having a physical form. And of course, over the subsequent years, I experimented with what is food, what is the best food to eat, what is the best food to eat for my body, and I also learned that I had to be loving or accepting, unconditionally accepting of the present state of transition that myself as an individual, the planet as an overarching organism, and human culture, and the universe are all going through analogous transitions. And we must be kind and loving towards ourselves as we go through this transition. Because I was thinking it was going through a transition like going through a doorway. I'm now on this side of the doorway, everything is different, and there's all new rules and a new paradigm to explore. I did not understand that the transition, because we are engaged in cosmic timescale, to the human timescale can take days, weeks, months, years, or even decades. So the act of walking through the doorway, quote unquote, to the human timescale can take any time between 1 minute and 100 years. Be kind to yourself in understanding that this transition to higher, less dense consciousness and a higher, less dense experience of reality can take a very long time. So, for example, if you still have fillings in your teeth that are mercury fillings, that's all right. It's not going to slow you down if you still utilize eyeglasses or wear dentures or any other kind of prosthetic or some, if you have something that you absolutely have to use in order to survive on a physical level. Like, for example, an insulin pump. You know something? You can still use your insulin pump. You do not have to discard all of the physical objects that support your physical body here in this time and place yet. The key word is yet. Brief pause. Because you see, we are in transition to the day when we will all be able to throw away our glasses, corrective lenses, prostheses of any kind, insulin pumps, pharmaceutical drugs, and physical food. None of that will be necessary. However, it would be a very cruel universe that decided to simply whisk out from underneath you the capacity to be supported by physical objects and not give you an immediate substitution. So, for example, if I were to take away your capacity or availability of physical food and I did not immediately furnish you with the capacity to ingest pure sunlight, there would be a very long, hungry time period for you. And it is truly a benevolent and very loving universe. When you look at human culture right now, human culture is in transition. We are moving out of what is called the old paradigm. The old paradigm is based upon materialism, the idea that when you look around the world with your physical eyes, you see a world of material or hard-edged objects, and that is quote-unquote reality, and that there is nothing more than reality. And this materialistic viewpoint and agenda has created a materialistic economy that is based on the premise that there's a limited number of objects. Like there's a limited number of molecules of gold on the surface of the earth. So in this materialistic economy, you dig up all the gold you can find or, do a computer modeling of how much gold exists. Say, we're now going to say there's this much gold and it costs this much per gram, and we have just determined economy or value based upon that. Of course, if you were able to invent new molecules of gold, as it is said alchemists are able to do, then that would completely skew the value system that is based upon the idea of a limited amount of material objects. We are exiting the value system and time period that is defined by having a limited amount of physical objects, because utilizing our own powers of manifestation, literally our pineal gland and the aperture known as the third eye, that is the energetic anatomical structure that interpenetrates and arises from a healthy functioning pineal gland. It is possible to create all sorts of new things. Not only can one create new molecules of gold, one could create diamonds, one could create any object of value that one desires. We're talking about moving into an unlimited realm that is powered by, I would say, imagination, but I do not want that word to be devalued. Because in this time and place and the objective materialistic culture that most of us grow out of, that most of us are here experiencing and, have marinated within, the idea is that there are a limited number of material objects and that you cannot simply create a new object with your mind. However, we're moving into a reality where you can absolutely simply create a new object with your mind. And that is really going to radically change the economy. People are familiar with the idea of a 3D printer. A 3D printer can print any object as long as you give it the parameters, like a quote-unquote program or blueprint or design or pattern to use, and the raw materials to print it with. In a 3D printer, mostly the raw materials are injectable plastic, or like a plastic that becomes soft at higher temperatures. Okay, with your pineal gland, think of it as a magical 3D printer for reality, and you are only limited by having a program that you can run and raw materials to work with. So both of these things have to do with sun gazing and ingesting light, because if you ingest solid objects and grind them up with your molars and swallow them down into your gut and have a bunch of bacteria digest them by proxy, and then you ingest the byproduct of their digestion, no matter how much food you eat, no matter how many sticks of butter you ate per day, that would still not be enough caloric energy to run, quote unquote, the 3D printer of your mind, or the 3D printer of your pineal gland and third eye. In order to run the energetic extrusion machine that is your pineal gland, third eye, and inner manifestation device, it is necessary to connect to the sun and tap into the source of energy that is higher consciousness with no intermediaries. And in order to do that, one must raise one's personal vibration and clear out any detritus or blockages from your energetic system. In the Far East, this is known as the process of raising one's kundalini. Kundalini being the ancient Sanskrit word for the energy that begins at the base of the spine and spirals upward and eventually orgasmically fountains out or bursts forth out of the crown chakra, the top of the head. However, Kundalini is another word for the energy flow that flows not only up the spine and out through the top of the head, but also in through the top of the head and down the spine, and then out through either the base of the spine or the soles of the feet. So in sun gazing, it is essential to make a complete energetic circuit. And this is very similar to electricity, but please do not be literal and please do not get stuck in the form. Just taking a little sip of water here. You are very much like an electrical transformer. And your energy is also different than mere electrons moving through a wire. So electrons moving through a wire creates a magnetic field. And each one of us has a magnetic field. It's known as your aura. And I paint paintings of it, and there are several examples available. At the lower left of the UCY screen, there is a feed from the Birth of a New Dimension Facebook page where I have listed several of my original paintings that depict the human non-physical energy field. This non-physical energy field is what is called your light body. Clearly, it is not made of physical light. It's not the type of light that we see emanating from a light bulb in the room. It is the type of light that we perceive with our non-physical eyes. So, I recently actually had this exchange on the internet while promoting and marketing my online course, which is called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And we'll go into that, and I'll invite you in this moment, actually, please go to my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com. Click on the online course tab and read all about Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, because that is where you can learn all of the step-by-step instructions of how to sun gaze. And there's many things that you have to do in order to prepare yourself, and there's many techniques that you have to employ in order to do it safely. Just like becoming a mega marathon runner. You know something? I wouldn't take a tiny child that's 4 years old and just shove them out the front door with no training and be like, go run 100 miles. Not only are they not old enough to do it, not only are their muscles not yet well formed, but even an adult has to work up to the stamina to be able to run 100 miles. And yes, it is humanly possible. Many people do it and have done it and do it all the time. But this is something that previously, not that long ago, if we talked about this 50 years ago, people would say, run 100 miles in a day? It's not possible. It's humanly not possible. Well, people say similar things about ingesting pure sunlight safely without harming one's retinas, and about eating pure sunlight as the main source of energy in one's diet. Even though there have been stories, apocryphal stories, from mostly the Far East, but also there's some from Europe, saints, yogis, and masters of perception that are able to fully eschew chewing, to no longer ingest physical objects and still live happily and healthfully. So there are some stories from the Far East of yoga practitioners. I will direct your attention to a story from Bavaria in the 1940s. This is in the area of Germany or Austria. A woman known as Therese von Neumann. She is labeled as a saint. She was a stigmatic in that she bled from her hands and feet once a week in sympathetic pains to Christ, or the experience of Jesus being murdered on the cross. And one of her other notable claims is that she did not ingest physical food for her sustenance during the last 25 years of her life, except for one little Eucharist a day. And she was watched and monitored to make sure she wasn't cheating, and yet she didn't lose weight and she maintained a very healthy body. So there are stories, just like there are stories of people who ran 100 miles, and now that people know that it's possible to run 100 miles, many more people are cultivating themselves to that level. Well, I will tell you, it is absolutely possible to, quote unquote, to use my allegory, run 100 miles, to use sunlight as the main basis for your nourishment. However, in order to do that, you have to do a lot of inner training. Just like in order to run 100 miles, it takes a lot of training. You're not going to roll out of bed one day and just put on your sneakers and go out, or run barefoot and go outside and just run 100 miles. It takes years of training and practice. So too is it with learning to sun gaze and connect one's third eye and system of perception directly to the sun. That is why I teach a class all about this. Instead of taking you as a newly emerged consciousness and shoving you out your front door with a pair of sneakers and saying, go run 100 miles, or saying, get outside and ingest some sunlight, I am helping you as a personal trainer to build all of the necessary, quote-unquote, muscles of consciousness so that you can actually perform this activity. And this activity, like being able to run 100 miles physically in your body, that's the equivalent of being able to migrate, like the way that a physical animal, like a monarch butterfly or a Canada goose, migrates hundreds of miles every season. Well, your consciousness migrates. You have been here on this rocky planet, this little outpost named Earth, for a long time, but it is really just one season in your cosmic consciousness. And eventually it will be time to do what I call the soul's migration. Your soul, even though that's a tricky word to define because people use it in all sorts of different ways, we will use soul here as your consciousness that is not necessarily tied to your biological format that you are within. It's your point of view, your current perspective. Your perspective is here on Earth having the experience of earthly life in this level of density. But I will tell you, this is not your final destination. This is a train station on your cosmic journey, going to many, many different places. And essentially, your consciousness has come here to this planet and had the amazing experiences of not only being human, but other forms of life that exist here as quote unquote gas to fuel your journey. We have come here, circulated through the refinery of consciousness that is this organism, and we take the refined end product with us when we leave on our journey. You don't necessarily take your physical body with you. You don't necessarily pack a suitcase and take with you your favorite book, crystal, or cat. You cannot do that. But what you can do is create a mental map of whatever you love so much and with such clarity that it can be recreated or accessed at any time. So, for example, I've got some wonderful mango juice sitting next to me on my table here. You know, when I came into this body and I started to learn that it's necessary to eat physical objects in order to survive, I had a wonderful awakening of the sensory pleasures of eating physical objects. Really, at first, I didn't understand, and my body had a lot of discomfort, so eating wasn't necessarily enjoyable. But when my body got to be more comfortable, I found out about things like chocolate-covered orange peel and, cookies and good things. And, I went through all of the wonderful exploration just the same way that a little toddler does, tasting all of these different things. And then I also found out about consequences. I found out, after years of eating sugar, that was not the optimum fuel for my body, especially because this body has a legacy of neurological damage and seizure activity that came from the battle against Satan that created the circumstances for me to walk in. So I went through a lot of trial and error before I found out, that optimum food for this body is fresh fruit and vegetable juice and fresh raw cannabis juice and hemp seed smoothies and non-genetically modified peanut butter. And, oh my goodness, I love peanut butter on an apple. That's a wonderful snack. I bring this up because even though I love mango juice and it's sitting right here on the table next to me, when I prepare to leave my current format and go on my soul migration, I'm not going to pack a gallon jug of mango juice to take with me. Nor will I take a pound of chocolate or, my favorite treats or bananas or whatever. I will, however, take the recording, the experience of having a physical analog body and feeling the physical molecules saturate my taste buds and cascade down my throat and go into my digestive system. I have multiple beautiful recordings of the sensory experience of ingesting my favorite food. Oh my goodness, I ingested some fried chicken at my friend's holiday party 2 years ago. That fried chicken has been recorded for posterity and will be replayed many times in the future hyperspace reality, beyond which I will no longer have a physical tongue, I will no longer have a physical digestive tract. There's a very good likelihood that physical chickens will no longer exist, and if they do, we certainly will not behead them and submerge them in searing hot fat in order to, cook them and eat them. However, I have these priceless recordings of the famous fried chicken, and they are indelible, they are eternal, and it means that not only does my body no longer have to ingest chicken and have the experience of all of the free radicals, and something, combustion is a very messy form of creating energy. Remember I spoke earlier about the inefficient engine that lets off both heat and sound and friction as its inefficiency. The physical body, when it combusts energy, for caloric energy. Literally, when you work out, you get hot. When I lift weights, my muscles get warm. I sweat, my body warms up. I am literally combusting energy. And it produces byproducts, and these byproducts are free radicals. The byproducts of oxygenation or burning are what literally causes aging on a cellular level. Well, I'll also tell you other things cause aging on a cellular level, and one of the things that I teach in my course about Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans are the techniques for longevity. Because I always tell people you're not meant to wear out in 100 years. Like, you can't get anything done in 100 years. You have no idea, people, how difficult it is. The first couple of decades, you're just finding your feet. You're just figuring things out. It takes a long time to understand who you are and your context, and then to even be able to begin to understand who you have been in the past or whom you have lived as concurrently. All of that takes a long time, and by the time you get into 50s, 60s, and 70s, that is when your consciousness is just starting to achieve the perspective to be able to really function correctly. And unfortunately, many people in this time and place never even get to that level of perspective. Many people die in their 20s, and they never get the perspective of having lived in order to see the overarching currents of consciousness. And this is what it is. When you are a very young person, like under age 10, everything has greater significance because you have a much smaller pool of experiences. So, for example, if a kid breaks their leg and they don't get to go swimming for one summer, to them it's the end of the world because they only have maybe 7 or 8 summers that they have ever experienced. And they can only envision what it's like to live for 7 or 8 years. So the perspective is what I'm talking about here. Achieving a galactic perspective takes many decades, and being able to connect into who and what you are beyond this lifetime also takes a long time. And so 100 years is not enough for the levels of self-exploration and realization that are necessary. One moment, please. So when I exit this level of reality, this layer of density, first of all, I'm in transition. As I spoke about earlier in this recording, I and all the cells in my body and all the planetary life, the biosphere, and the noosphere, which is planetary consciousness, we are all on a concurrent journey that is called ascension. Ascension is the alternative to death. I can tell you all about this because I went through the death portal on October 8th of the year 2001. I don't have to die. I already died. I can tell you all about what the experience was like. You might not want to hear about it because I will tell you it was very uncomfortable. It was not pleasant. It's definitely something that one would wish to avoid. It's not something to look forward to. Or at least I will tell you, I can only speak from my personal experience. It was very unpleasant. It was very uncomfortable. However, death is very similar to birth. You know something? Some babies are born in a hot tub and there's candlelight and beautiful music and it's all nice and, super soft and gentle. Some babies are born like in a cab in the, Lincoln Tunnel trying to get to the hospital. That is a lot more like what my birth experience was like. My walking in experience or the death experience was very traumatic. It was like being born on a battlefield, and it was very uncomfortable, and it left a lot of biological damage that was very painful that had to be healed over many years. However, I've met and spoken with other walk-ins who had a beautiful, seamless transition, a seamless, painless experience of walking in, where they simply woke up and they simply knew who they were and they remembered and they had continuity of consciousness. Very different than my experience, which was just full of turmoil and took me years to unravel and get perspective and look at what had happened and even be able to speak about it with any kind of sense of articulation or to be able to make sense of it as a story that I could rationally share with others. So we're in transition. Don't throw out your eyeglasses yet. Don't pull out all your mercury fillings and live with a mouthful of holes, because we're not yet there at the point of totally being able to regenerate our cellular structure. In order, like if you wanted to regenerate your teeth, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Yes, humanity, one day we will all be able to regenerate whatever missing or damaged body parts you've got. This is the whole point. Your teeth have always been meant to be able to be regenerated. No, the idea of having one set of teeth that gets damaged by dental caries and, diminishes over decades and then living with no teeth at all is not the original plan or operating system for the wonderful apparatus that is known as your physical body. No, of course not. Our teeth were meant not only to be able to be remineralized throughout the course of our daily existence, but if you ever lost a tooth, say due to injury or illness or some mechanical, thing hitting you in the mouth, that you would be able to regenerate your tooth. And there have been apocryphal stories of people who lost their teeth and then grew a third set in their old age. And, these are held up as like, quote unquote, freaks of nature, medical marvels, mysteries like Ripley's Believe It or Not. But these things are like the equivalent of running 100 miles. What was deemed impossible or beyond the physical realm of human limitations not that long ago will come within what is defined as the level of physical human limitations. So part of it is belief system. You need to do yoga of the belief system to stretch what you believe is possible. Part of it is energy, because just like the 3D printer, if you don't have anything to print with, doesn't matter how great your program and how great your machine is, you can't make something. You need raw materials. You need energy. And this is what connecting to the sun is all about. So, okay, connecting to the sun. I cannot teach you how to do it in 1 hour over the radio. It really does require many weeks of preparation and guidance. And it's a type of preparation and guidance that you get by enrolling in my class. FlyingRainbowLasagna.com online course in order to check this out. And while I have you here, I'm going to read the syllabus for level 1. There are 2 levels. One I call initiatory. This is like equivalent to beginning physics, like when you learn of the existence of an atom and the existence of different forces or particles in the universe. And then I also have level 2, which the prerequisite is completing level 1 and having an interest and a desire to apply the basic concepts that I have taught in level 1. The first course is the chakras, their shape, the colors that they are associated with, the geometries, even though eventually I don't call it geometry anymore because the word geometry has as its root geo, meaning earth. And the word geometry actually means measuring the earth. And what I teach and what we're talking about when we talk about these patterns of energy that many people paint and draw at this point, this is a higher dimensional language. I call it a vibrational language or an interdimensional language of color, line, shape, form, and tone. And that includes music, because it's also expressed, these truths of the universe are also expressed through music. Lesson 2 is about the torus, the toroidal or donut-shaped energy field that not only surrounds you as an individual, it's Earth's magnetosphere, it's the sun's heliosphere, it's the shape of energy surrounding a black hole, it's the shape of the universe. This is the concept of as above, so below, and nested realities. Lesson 3 is about time. Time is not what you understand it to be. It is necessary to do yoga of perception and expand and stretch and become more flexible in your conception of what is time shaped like? And a lot of my artwork is a visual representation of the shape of time. Then I go into organic and inorganic life. Defining, you are a physical presence in an organic cellular body, and you are living concurrently with the light body or the chakra system or the beings that are of higher dimensional, less dense realms that totally surround and interpenetrate you and are a part of your body in exactly the same way that 3 trillion gut bacteria occupy your small intestine. Lesson 5 is about meditation. This is when we start to get into actual techniques of sun gazing, flying rainbow lasagnaing as a verb. That's right. One can flying rainbow lasagna with the sun. That's like connecting with the sun. The next lesson is the physical world versus the non-physical world, but really it begins the concept of resolving duality. No longer splitting the world into these two arbitrary realms of physical or non-physical, but beginning to make a seamless continuum with our own consciousness being a bridge between those realms. In Lesson 8, I speak about the singularity, not only the concept as it is described by science, the presence of all energy and all possibilities and all timelines, but also the singularity as a spiritual concept, unity consciousness, and how that affects you because you have that singularity within you, and it is also in the sun, in the earth, in the center of every atom. Lesson 9 is non-religious Christ consciousness. Can't stress this enough. When I speak about Christ, I am speaking about consciousness. I am not speaking about the Vatican, the Christian religion, or anything that has been done or taught or disseminated in the name of Christ, because a lot of that stuff has been further distortions and perturbations of the field of consciousness, and I'm actually here as a tool to assuage all of those perturbations and set things right. When we get to Lesson 10, also these lessons are available as not only streaming online on YouTube or Educreations, also as a DVD box set. There's two sets, lessons 1 through 10 and lessons 11 through 20. So when we get to lesson 10, it's all about the flying rainbow lasagna. We finally get to how it was created, what is the significance, how does this new knowledge have an impact on your life. Every time you are exposed to new knowledge, it changes you on a deep cellular and genetic level. This is called epigenetics. During this hour, you have been changed. You have chosen to be changed. I didn't hold you down and force the radio station to play into your headphones or anything like that. You chose to expose yourself to my voice. You chose to change your vibration, literally, by ingesting new ideas and new concepts. The flying rainbow lasagna is one of those new concepts that will radically change you on a genetic level. Lesson 11 goes into the connection with the flying rainbow lasagna and the Merkaba and the Vajrayana or diamond body. This is the crystalline body. It is known in Buddhism as the Vajrayana or diamond body, which is incorruptible. It is attainable through meditation, and once you attain that body, you have attained the type of coherence on a non-physical level that allows you to make your soul migration or transition successfully from this existence into the next existence without losing who you are. When we get to level 12, it's all about energetic anatomy, the coincidence of the pineal gland and the crown chakra and the brow chakra. We do a lot with the specifics of that anatomy. Lesson 13 is, again, a practical lesson about exactly how to sun gaze, exactly how to use your third eye. Lesson 14 is about ascension and techniques for ascension. Lesson 15 is about manifestation. Once you actually get your quote-unquote 3D printer of your pineal gland hooked up to the sun and you have ideas and sunlight, you can begin manifesting. You can begin creating reality. We do a lot with also cultivating unconditional love so that when you are creating reality, you are creating from a point of unconditional love in harmonic resonance with the unconditional love of the universe. So, for example, if I wanted to capriciously, I want to manifest, a purple dinosaur, and the universe is like, sorry, Aurora, that's just not in the plan. I would have to mitigate my own desires and be like, okay, universe, maybe I'll manifest a polka dotted dinosaur. And then the universe might say, yes, we will do a polka dotted dinosaur with you. This is co-creative partnership. This is understanding that you, as a co-creator, have to work with higher consciousness. It's like saying you are one instrument in a symphony that is called the universe. And you're not allowed to just play whatever songs or whatever notes, bleep, blop, beep, bop, beep, bop, doop, 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 that you want to do, because that beep, bop, beep, bop, 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 doop, doop, has to fit in with everyone else's music that they're playing. So one must be a sensitive musician, listening to the universe, listening to the notes that the other musicians are playing, and playing with unconditional love, or harmoniously fitting in your desires to manifest with what the universe wishes to have manifest. Lesson 16 is all about death, redefining the death journey. Lesson 17 coincides with that because it is about DMT, which your pineal gland releases naturally upon the moment of death or out-of-body and near-death experiences. And Lesson 17 also covers cannabis, which is another fascinating endogenous or naturally occurring brain chemical. Lesson 18 is called Self-Protection from Negative Lower Vibrational Thought Entities. I put it all the way at the end of the course because if I started out with it, it would scare everyone's pants off. It basically tells you why you're enslaved, how you got to be a slave, and how to set yourself free. Techniques for becoming free from the extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional overlords that have been harming humanity for thousands of years. I want to say tens of thousands of years, many multiple thousands of years. After Lesson 18, we go into positivity. It's all about, Lesson 19 and Lesson 20 are about resolving duality, transforming Earth surface culture, transforming your life on a personal level, and basically ascension, where we are headed in the future. This is where I talk all about leaving the surface of the planet as a collective of beings who ingest nothing but pure sunlight, no longer require the intermediary of chlorophyll or plants on the surface of a planet in order to eat solidified sunlight, and have the freedom and latitude to explore wherever we wish with our consciousness. Please join me on the stellar transition. Please join me in the upcoming semester of Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. The details to register are available on the page flyingrainbowlasagna.com/online course. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me on this journey of consciousness.